I'll never do that again. I'll never eat that again. I'll never drink that again, or I'll never do that activity again, or I'm going to do this every single day from now on. Revolutions are bloody. They're hurtful, and they're damaging, and they're traumatic. You don't need a revolution in your life. A mere 6 months ago, I was still bedridden. I made a decision to change, but all I could do at the time was stretch in bed. Today, my yoga routine mostly consists of me standing. In retrospect, my improvements seem whiplash fast, but during the process, it felt anything but quick. The changes in nutrition and exercise felt so minimal at the time I was making them. But those little habits compound over time, and consistency pays off big time. Instead of fast food breakfast and lunch and dinner, I'm preparing my lean meats, fruits, and veggies at home these days. A few years ago, I would have cringed at that idea, but I've been slowly evolving, and now I wouldn't have it any other way. I'll stick with my eggs, turkey bacon, and protein coffee, thank you. Alright, so I use this Rise protein powder. And I make fresh coffee, and then I put this powder in the coffee. Lid on. Listen. Lid sealed. Listen to this. 1, 2, 3. Oh! That's a relief valve. It only happens on the first time. But when that fresh coffee and that protein powder combine, it's explosive, but it tastes fantastic, and I get my protein powder in. I was just contemplating the last few months of my transition from being bedridden. I could do yoga movements, stretching in the bed, to eventually being able to sit in a chair and do some stretching exercises. And about that time was when I transitioned to a walker, and put all my weight on that thing and push it around, and that's how I could move around. And then now I've transitioned to using a cane to walk around. I don't use the walker at all anymore. And most of my morning yoga routine is done standing. I still have the chair that assists me when my legs just get too tired to hold me up anymore, but most of it's standing now. I do a lot more walking, and all of those transitions from the bed to the walker to the cane, from the bed to the chair to standing, have just been the product of incremental small changes in my life. In the past, I've had a tendency to want to just make revolutionary changes. I'd see something that needs to happen, change, get frustrated with my life the way it is, and I want to change something, and then, I'll never do that again. I'll never eat that again. I'll never drink that again, or I'll never do that activity again, or I'm going to do this every single day from now on, and just huge, waves of change, and it just never lasted. I would try and do it maybe a day or two, and then it was too much because it wasn't a part of my
Wasn't a part of my habits that I built. And what I've learned in the last year really is it's easier to make the changes one little incremental step at a time. Instead of, okay, I'm going to eat healthy from here on out. I'm not going to eat any more junk food or anything like that. It's easier just to start adding some healthy food to your normal routine and just, keep eating the cookies and the donuts if that's the way you eat all the time, You'll eventually get there. You'll be able to cut those things out, you just add that good stuff in, and then before you know it, a little bit at a time, you like squeeze that other stuff out of your life. You start eating more salads, and you add a salad to your meal, or you add some fruit to your daily routine, or whatever, and you just make those little adjustments, time at it, one step at a time. And that ends up going further in the long run. I mean, it ends up being a solid change because it becomes a part of your daily habit. And it's just a part of who you are now. And you just make little tweaks as you go along. And, today I'm not gonna walk 500 more steps today than I did yesterday. I'm going to walk, 20 more steps today than I did yesterday, or 10 or 5 or however many, however small that incremental step is, it's progress. And you just do that, slowly over time will actually produce change in your life. Revolutions are bloody, they're hurtful, and they're damaging, and they're traumatic. You don't need a revolution in your life. You need one small step at a time, because that consistent progression is the key. That's what makes the difference. So, hope that helps somebody.